You start already. Oh gosh, I was just like as the intro. Oh, by the way, hello everybody. Hello YouTube. Hello everybody in chat. Welcome Joe Davidian from Answers and Reasons. If anybody can't tell from that wise ass comment in the chat, say hello to Joe. Okay, I realized that Dave, maybe we should have talked before I brought him up here, eh? Like maybe I should have got some pointers on how to do this from you. But we're going to do the best that we can. I mean,
Good luck.
I think I don't know. They don't call me Bear for nothing, Joe. It's not cuddly. I think I can handle it. I think it'll be fun. I mean, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting, and hopefully everybody will take something away to think about, which is the only goal that I ever had for any of these. So, that's why it's called a library chat. It's as if you're just sitting here, have a little drink, or be at the pub and talking to a mate, and we're just talking about all that stuff that, most people won't talk to us about, right, Joe? You get a little thing you want to mention, and then people are like, oh my gosh, 5 hours later, do we really want to keep on? But for me it's interesting, and we chose the subject of language, which is a big subject, a big subject. But you've done a great job in your essays, which for everyone in the chat and those of you listening, I have linked in the description on Answers and Reasoning. Joe and many of the authors and participants over there do a great job at just writing it all out and just laying it down in concept for you and taking it there, giving you something to think about on it and laying the issues out to bear. And those articles were great. Joe did a great job. And it kind of got me thinking, because I'm fascinated by language anyway. The way everyone uses it, reading, writing, musically, language in general is just something that really interests me all over. You got some interesting guidelines on it, on how it goes astray.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, there's so many different ways you can sort of interpret language, but I mean, if we just focus on a common language and we talk about English, I mean, one of the first examples we could even bring up is the difference between American English and British English, and not even to mention the different types of English you get in England,
right?
But there are certain words that are used in both countries but can have incredibly different meanings. I mean, one of the first examples I can have, and I remember, of language going wrong. Now, I used to live in America. I lived there for about 18 months in Michigan. Oh, and when I was about 18, I returned to visit my friends, and we were having a drink, and we were having this conversation, and it started off talking about the word cool, and they were all talking about, oh yeah, we're all cool. I was like, no, none of us are cool. To me, cool at that time was sort of somewhat aesthetic, and the way you presented yourself as well, the way you held yourself, your attitude, and all of that. And I was like, no, we're all a bunch of dorks at the end of the day. But and they were talking about this one guy in particular. I said, no, he's a total geezer. Now, me saying geezer was just like basically someone who's a bit of a legend. He's a fucking geezer, mate. But they
like a classic, like a legend, like
yes.
like okay.
And they took that to mean like an old geezer, and it started this massive argument. And I mean that wasn't helped by the fact that we were drunk. Okay, so
but in America, that's like calling someone an old fart. Like basically, to be blunt.
Exactly. And we do have an old geezer, which would just be describing an old person, but a geezer is a bit different. So. And it basically escalated to the point where I ended up moving the guy I was arguing with and walking off, as you do when you're drunk, But I mean, that is one of the most early examples I can think of about how you can see that language can be one of those things that even when you're speaking the same language, you're not necessarily playing the same language game.
You're not actually speaking the same language because everybody kind of customizes it to themselves. I know myself is peppered with both a lot of different cultural words. Like I know the difference between crisps and chips and biscuits and cookies. And I get a lot of flack for it because I can go back and forth. Like if you say it, I know what you mean. You know exactly what you mean, and we could have a conversation. But it's because I had that cultural influence in my youth, and because of that's how I was, it was constant. But a lot of Americans wouldn't. If you said crisps, they would be like, I don't think you mean potato chips. What you do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I got that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Or a biscuit is a cookie, because even here, some of our cookies are labeled biscuits. If we get but it will be like in for an example, the Petridge Farm, Americans will understand. The Petridge Farm's huge pack of assortments will say a biscuit collection.
Yep.
I don't know if we ever noticed that, but they're actually telling you these are European style cookies. You know what I mean? They're actually using the language appropriately there. Even though it's like sold in American product, everybody eats them, everybody loves them. They don't
you're
catch
right there. I mean, it's a broad term. You use cookie to basically be any type of thing that it would, including our biscuits. Whereas we do have cookies, but they're the typical cookies that you'd find, like the chocolate chip cookie or the raisin cookie or anything like that. They are a specific thing. Whereas then you have the biscuits that are different. But obviously, in America, the weirdest thing was biscuits and gravy. I thought that was weird, and I found no, you're just talking about bread rolls.
I know it kind of it is a fluffy old bread roll though, like not like a hamburger roll or a dinner roll. It's a whole different. It's like a difference. It's like a combination. In biscuits and gravy, when they say biscuits, they're referring to a leavened biscuit that is a cross between a scone and a dinner roll. That's the best thing I can come up with. Like that is what they mean, and I understand that because sauce. Have you had biscuits and gravy while you were over here?
Oh my God. I didn't know.
Oh, it's so. Oh, Joe, you got to come back then, because you understand. Just for that, Icarus says, talking about language, what are chips? He's asking us both. I can't believe you're asking me this, Icarus. Like, we don't know. You want to get into a French fry discussion up here because, like, also, if you pick chips, right, Joe? There are so many different words for chips.
Oh, yeah. So, obviously, you've got your standard chips from a chippy shop, which are the big fat chips. You've got your steak cut chips. You've got your home style fry chips. You've got your French fry, which is a type of chip. You've got microchips.
And let's not forget American versions of waffle chips, curly chips, all the time, all of them. Or wedge chips, but they don't call them chips. They call them all. They're all fries.
Yeah, well, we call curly fries as well, because when they get to a certain thinness, they stop being called chips and they start becoming like fries, but we regard them as a type of chip.
Yeah. And it's funny because everybody knows, like, I know they're going to beat them, but I do know the difference, and I do get caught up in the language a lot, back and forth depending on who we're talking to about it. But to me, a French fry is the really, really skinny ones. That's when I'm saying French fry, like a McDonald's, like a fast food version, the really, really thin ones. But everything else is a chip, especially the ones that I get in a cup. Like here, we've got a lovely fish and chips place in one town over that does original fish and chips in a paper cone with malt vinegar. And like, that's a chip. Like, just doused like that. That's an original chip to me, like a French fry. But they're kind of thicker, but not as thick as what you would call like a wedge or a steak fry. It's kind of like something in between.
Yeah, that'd be standard chips.
Yeah. And I don't know if you they serve them in like a white paper cone, like a funnel cone. It's kind of reminds me of chips. What. Yep, that's what my nan used to tell me about them. I've never been in England and got a proper handful of them myself, but I'm looking forward to it one day. It'd be cool. So now all right, that debate's over. We can't even debate about that. Like, there's no debate. There's no argument about any of that. Like, And they're all going with us, so it's like everybody gets it because they're so used to how I go back and forth with many of my American friends. Hey, Luke, welcome. How are you?
So
Thanks, Luke. Oh, Steve, look, Joe, this is Luke's revenge. She's going to try to derail us both. Look at this. Oh my gosh. All right.
He's right. That's what we're doing, Luke. And
Yeah.
you know what? You're here watching us.
Yes.
So what does that
Welcome, loser. Welcome, loser. Nice to have you here. I'm flattered. It's like I don't mind. It's a great club to be in if that's what we all are.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm happy too. But
we'll create a private language where loser is cool. There you go.
There you go. We could do that. We could definitely do it because that's what people do, right? When they're approaching a subject that they're really well versed on, and they start talking to somebody about it, like in their own language about it, all from their understanding. Yeah,
exactly. Now that's the thing. Like we've sort of covered off the difference between different types of English, but then you've got people who have like private languages, and like that. They are you'll sort of form these in your various social bubbles, So as I joked that we could use the word loser to mean cool, we could, and within our little bubble, we would know what we were talking about, but other people wouldn't know what we're saying, and this is one of the things that when I was younger, we used to call Tony Hawk's Pro Skater Desley for some reason, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know how it happened. It was probably a hell of a lot of weed and just giggling. But no one outside of our little bubble would understand that. And sometimes I actually talk about Desley and people look really confused. And obviously it's easy for me to understand why they haven't, because it's a small private language, because it's just something that happened when I was younger. But sometimes you can think about groups on social media, for example, which start developing their own private languages, and they can start using these terms and they know what they mean, but other people might not.
Right, exactly. And I think you had a term for that, right? Would that fall under the technical use of language when you're talking from
that's sort of private language. It's more just a local language. It's your personal language. It's something only you people know. But what you do say next about technical language, I mean, there are people who use overly technical language, and they almost obfuscate their points, whether it's intentional or not. Sometimes you can work out, sometimes you can't. But some people use a lot of I can't think of the term right now, but basically the overly verbose and elaborate terminology to make themselves seem smart, or at least it can seem like that sometimes. And it's, it sometimes makes them sound like they know what they mean, but
exactly. And a lot of times I agree with you. It may not even be intentional, because here they are, they're getting to talk about a subject that they have studied or they are very well versed in, and they've learned all of the big words about it, all of the different definitions and all of the different all the different micro parts of it that are very important to them, and they're going to try to talk to you about it, throwing all that in there, because it's just like they're just enthusiastic about the subject. They know the subject, not realizing that you may not know that term because you've never studied that subject. You have no idea. So it's very limited to what they're trying to get across. Unless you take courses in how to speak to the public or write for the public, Twitter and YouTube can be a dangerous place.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know, but like here in the States, when I was, I had my own business dealing with the public, and I had to write out proposals for business, and they would actually coach us to only write in third grade English terms.
Really?
Don't go past whatever I learned as far as that, because it has to be for the masses. It has to be, and it's not saying that America was dumb. It was saying it has to be that easily digestible instantaneously. And that point I got, because if it's something like that, at that kind of, it's like it's what they call no brainer. You don't have to engage so much to it. It just automatically you get what somebody is trying to say. It makes it simple, but it is also very hard to write technical manuals in that way. I can get that, but then again, the people that are actually reading technical manuals are expecting the language to be technical, right? I mean, they're expecting certain things, but when you're just doing broad proposals, like in advertising, you ever notice the language that they use in advertising is very minimal. It's to make sure that it's very easily put across and easily understood right away. Yeah.
Well, one of the things they actually say is, to show that you can really understand a topic well, and I mean really, really understand a topic, you should be able to explain it to a 5-year-old in terms that they understand. But I mean, at least if you can sort of hit the teenager sort of demographic, that shows that you really understand it.
That you do. Arcanics is saying, trying not to use the nomenclature of specialism is really hard when you are passionate about it. Exactly. Like, I don't think it's intentional the way somebody come out, being like speaking outside of what you might understand. It's because they're passionate, So, and yet there are some of those, there's some people that like to bloviate. Is that it? I guess that's that want to, and make themselves a little bigger than they are, or try to express their knowledge on you. And they don't actually, their intent is not that you understand. It's just that you understand that they understand. You know what I mean? As long as you get the point that they know what they're talking about, you don't need to understand what they're saying.
Even if they don't actually know what they're talking about, which is sometimes the case, as long as they appear to you like they know, and you should accept what I'm saying because I've used these words.
Oh, that's just about 80% of Twitter. Okay, there we go. All right. No, I get it. I definitely get it. All right. I'm daring to put up a Luke comment. You ready? All right, here we go. All right. People literally have so many issues with understanding mental illness because of this. Someone on Twitter who said they had psychosis used you're going to do a two-parter on me. I wasn't ready. Okay, where are you? Use the, here it is, colloquial definition of delusion in a discussion with me on Twitter. I saw that, Bearded. I thought that was absolutely the bizarrest thing I've ever seen. That's a big thing. I think even at the end of the article or the essay, I guess I should call it, that Joe wrote, you don't get to talk about that about theist versus atheism, and using that as an argument of when you use terms like delusional or psychosis or hallucination and all of that, and disparaging mental health that way.
I think I might have brought it up in both of them, actually. In both the articles. I think it's one of those things that needs to be brought up. So when and sort of attacked from different angles as well. A lot of the articles I do write, I sometimes try and present a sort of almost different sides of it, and sometimes they're incredibly long as it is, and I try not to make them too long. So I think that is one of the biggest issues that we do have on social media, is people using scientific language in a colloquial way, and also the expectation. So if one of us atheists is talking to a creationist and they're using theory and evolution as an idea and a changing kind, we'll sort of say to them, well, you've got to learn the science. You should actually be using this term correctly. You're talking about, evolution. You're talking about this. You should actually learn the science, and then you would realize theory isn't just an idea. Yes, it can mean an idea, but that's the colloquial definition. Yet when it becomes to an attack on theists, saying that they're delusional, they're crazy, they're hallucinating, or any of the other words that you hear people say, they don't actually take on board what the scientific definitions of these things are. So they're almost special pleading because they want to hold the theists to a standard that they're not willing to hold themselves to.
Exactly.
And it's kind of frustrating as well, because sometimes they'll defend themselves by saying, well, no, people know what I mean. I mean, they have a sort of subjective clarity and maybe an in-group clarity. But even then, within their in-group, some people, so, you know, someone might say, oh, yeah, well, delusional is not being crazy. I'm careful with my words. You're like, okay. So what do you mean by delusional and crazy then? But then you'll have someone else jump in and go, well, yeah, it is a mental illness. It should be regarded that way. And you're like, okay, so now you can see, even with your in-group, because you're using these terms this way, some people are saying, no, this is it is a mental illness, and other people are saying, well, no, I don't mean it in the technical terms. I just mean it in the sense that I think they're wrong. And you're like, okay, is there other language you can use? And I think this is a big part. If there are other words that we can use that can make our points clearer and not refer to a psychological diagnosis, then surely we should actually use those, because then we're not going to be risking creating a stigma against religion. I mean, it doesn't matter if your intent is not to stigmatize mental illness and to not use these terms in a derogatory way towards the mentally ill. It is an effect that can and does happen quite regularly. So why would you use those terms unless actually you do mean it that way, but you're just going, when you're backed into a corner, oh no, I don't mean it.
Yeah. And that's the thing right there. Like, if you're not, if your true intent is to just get the understanding, and you're not trying to stigmatize or to label a situation, and you're actually just trying to present an argument about how you're coming from, something like that, then when somebody is trying to correct you on the language or a misunderstanding of being defensive is probably not the best first move. And I'm sure you'll agree with this, Joe. Actually trying to understand how they could have misinterpreted, and actually going back and looking at what you said with the outside perspective that you have just been graciously offered. Because that's a learning lesson like that right there. None of us speak in terms of perfection ever. Nobody does. And when you're dealing with another individual, that language is got to be crafted and cultivated to the environment you're speaking at all times. We almost have to be language chameleons. All right, here I go getting flowery. Going to annoy AF all of you precise people, but you know, if you're here, you're used to it, because that's how I talk. But you do need to be a language chameleon. You need to know your audience. You need to know where you are, or you need to learn quickly, especially if you're being graciously. And I say graciously in a sarcastic, yes, those are quotes. Those are double quotes I used around graciously, because I know the arguments that they're talking about, and they're not gracious at all. They are not gracious at all when they come back at you. But look at it as as most of you do, which is quite entertaining for me. I read them all. I participate in none of them on purpose, but I read them all, and you quite eloquently take the learning lesson and go around and try to switch it around, try to see what they're talking about, and try to coach it back to what your intention is. And that is the lesson I get from it, is to be that open to it and take that graciousness of somebody hitting back at you like, no, I meant this, and just say, yeah, but I know you meant that, but can you possibly see how someone could have interpreted it? I mean, it just happened to me on Twitter in a nice way today. I posted Ayn Rand's, she had made a meme, and I was dealing with someone who just didn't want to understand anything about telling the truth. So I, got a little annoyed, and I saw a quote bar from Ayn Rand that said, "The truth is not for all men, but only for those who seek it." And I posted it, and I put it out there. And the first thing I got back was like something along the lines of, on a language thing, saying, "Oh, all men, not women? Like, don't you think that's like, this is what's wrong with society? We are so gender specific and blah, blah." I'm like, I know, that's not what they mean, but I do see the point. And I really I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, as I know, that is not what Ayn Rand, a woman, put that quote out there. I'm sure she didn't mean men like men. Maybe, as Joe and I were talking prior, like human, like humankind, like in all men, meaning all of us. Yes, that does appear to be gender specific, doesn't it? But if you look a little deeper to it, it's not, because the word is human. The word is humankind. It has the word man in it. And this is how this happened. This is how the language developed that way to make that word used to mean all of us. We don't have to like it. Maybe it needs to change, but it's not intended to knock off half of the population of the world in a meme. Okay, I'm sure that was not Ayn Rand's intent. I know where she's coming from with stuff. I mean, if y'all familiar with her, she's first of all, she's a woman. Why would she do that? Second of all, if you read anything she writes, or you read where she comes from, any of her statements, I doubt she's just, meant it that way. But it opened up an interesting thought for today's conversation, that's how easily it happens. That's how easily things can just, go that way. But it also led into a great little points for the use of language, about how the use of language here in the United States with particular medical procedures in regards to, let's just say, birth control procedures, like, insurance companies will write that that's okay for a woman, but a man, no. So a woman can get her tubes tied and it's covered, but because it only addresses women in the birth control sentence, it never even comes up that the man could possibly get a vasectomy, which actually the outcome is the same, birth control, but because the clauses only mention women, it's a male-oriented procedure, so it doesn't even get considered.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. And it's all about language, right? It's all about what's in there, what they put in there. They use the word women and women's services, and there you go. They just left out half the population, even though the end result is still birth control. It's still the interruption of the process. It's still a surgical procedure. They still had more in common than it didn't. The only thing it didn't have in common was gender. And gender, the use of gender language is becoming, in our country for legislation, a very hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why people will jump over a lot of gendered terminology, or things that appear to be gendered. But as you mentioned, sometimes you've got to think about the intent, and especially historically, you've got to understand where they were coming from. And I think, maybe we do need to be careful right now and not say things like all man, if we mean mankind. We should be specific and say all humans, maybe, or all people. But I think there needs to be something in both parties where people need to be willing to listen to how their language might be confused, but people also need to be a little bit more forgiving of these terms that they might find offensive, and actually just explain, look, this is why I'm finding this particular term offensive. And you should be able to have that dialogue instead of it instantly going into fight mode, because that tends to be the way these things go. Someone says something, it's misinterpreted, or the intent is misunderstood, and fine, that happens to all of us. But then it's straight away aggro back at them, and it puts the person who said the wrong thing, right, on the back foot, and they get defensive, and then they don't listen to the criticism of what they say. So we can't control what we get offended by, but we can control how we act on that offense. And if we can learn to have a better dialogue with each other, then perhaps we'll sort of get around this whole offense thing eventually, and we've got to stop thinking, well, you're just stupid for thinking that, even if we might find something stupid ourselves, and do you know what? You can think that someone getting offended by something is a bit silly. There's nothing wrong with thinking it's silly. What's wrong is bullying them over it, teasing them, telling them they're an idiot for thinking that way. At the end of the day, we're all going to find different things a little bit ridiculous, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we should ridicule people for it.
No, I totally agree with that. That happens much too often. If you're trying to make a point, coming from it with openness is always going to be better. I mean, if you're trying to make a point, your end goal is always that they understand it, right?
Yep.
Unless you're just talking to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're just out there to spout it, which that happens too. I'm just saying in general conversation, understanding and having someone see it either from, not necessarily see it from your perspective, but understand your perspective, like where you're coming from, like get some idea of what you're saying and why you're speaking the way you are on a certain subject or about a certain thing. Well, that's just intelligent discourse back and forth, but always with the end goal of it actually being received, in a comfortable manner for the other person. And sometimes we do have to change the way we put it. I mean, I've been told many times that, perhaps I'm a little too blunt in how I just like drop a bomb on somebody about something. And, I can understand that. Some people that doesn't work very well with. They will shut down. They don't want to understand. They instantly feel like the aggressiveness of it instead of words, A lot
Yep.
of times because of tone and contexture, they will automatically feel a certain way about something and not even hear the words that come with it. There was a saying, I think it Toni Morrison that said people will always remember how you made them feel, not necessarily what you said, which was a lesson in coaching how you say it so that it is received the way you want, because that changes everything too. And that's hard on Twitter because there's no context or tone in
No,
the
no,
in those characters, not
no,
a lot of
definitely
grammar.
not. And
Not a lot of
and
grammar sometimes either, but
no, yeah, and you've got a very, very short space to fill in. So you actually learn to be quite concise with your language. And it benefits folks like you and me, myself, who are
hmm
generally quite blunt and direct. And, I
hmm
will rather give someone a bullet point list. And if they've got any questions, they can ask me rather than going into detail about every little aspect of the thing. And that sort of bluntness, even that, if you go, oh
hmm
yeah, if you're managing someone, oh, here's your list of things to do tomorrow, boom, 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 boom,
hmm
and you think, right, there you go, simple direct instructions that can
hmm
come across you know as you said, it can become across as a aggressive or
yeah, yeah, right. And it
and
and they won't be open, like they just shut down, like,
yeah.
and I can understand that, even though it's not my intent to do it, like I can understand, and then try to pull it back a little bit. Well,
Exactly. And that's encouraged. That sort of dialogue is encouraged by Twitter because you're trying to get everything into 280 characters or less. And if you
right.
multi-tweet, sometimes people think you're ranting.
hmm
So they shut down that way. So you're sort of in a lose-lose situation with some of
hmm
the conversations with some people anyway. You're either writing too short and bluntly for them and they're going to take offense.
hmm
They think you're being condescending in some way and you're just like, well,
hmm
no, I'm just trying not to be verbose. But then you go, okay, I'll explain this in more detail, and all of a sudden you're having a go at them and you're ranting away, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know how else to do this. Would you like a conversation in DM? Would you like a
right.
conversation on
hmm
Discord? I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation about this.
hmm
My intent is completely being misunderstood, and I
hmm
don't know if it's being misunderstood intentionally or not.
right.
Because
Which you
sometimes
can
people,
figure out usually I don't know about you, but if I'm verbally speaking with someone, if it's a conversation, I can get tone and context pretty quick. I get a better feel for where they're coming from, like right away. And I know
yeah,
I'm able to express myself better. Like you can hear humor. You can't always read it.
no, definitely
But,
not.
but you can definitely hear humor, like the change in someone's tone or how they express it, where the period drops, where the inflection is. Like you can hear humor. Um,
Actually, on that exact point, God, this is going back 10 years ago now. But
mhm.
I actually fell out with my best friend over a
Hi.
Facebook comment, right?
What?
Over a
Yeah,
Facebook
yeah,
comment. It was just
yeah.
like one or two lines, and it was one of those tongue-in-cheek comments. And then he was like really pissed off with me, and he basically didn't talk to me for ages. And then he finally called me up and said, we're going to talk about this then. And I went, what? I don't know what's going on. Is what that thing you said. And I repeated it to him. And I said, what? When I said da 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 da, I don't remember what it was. He was like, oh, you meant it like that? Yeah, that is quite funny, isn't it? Like,
and you wasted all that time because nobody talked about it. Like, first of all, you probably didn't even know he was mad. He just didn't talk to you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I hate that. When people won't tell you they have an, like, if you would just tell me you have an issue, I could probably either give you an explanation as to what I meant, what I said, or even an immediate apology. If I'm an asshole, which I am often, I admit it. Okay, I am a huge asshole when it comes to certain things, but I will own it, especially if you feel I went out of my way to hurt you because it wasn't my intent. But I'll be an asshole about things. I think some things are funny and other people don't. Like, I have a weird, sarcastic, kind of brutal sense of humor, and but I own it, and I'm not intending to hurt anybody. I really appreciate the people that come to me and go, Claire, I kind of took that wrong way, and I try to have a conversation with them, and then we're usually fine. But the ones that they just have all this stuff that they're putting on you about what you said or what you did or how you meant something, okay, and then walk away in silence, brewing and making all the decisions on their own and not having any discourse about, like, settling it, like they're settling it all by themselves somewhere, that never gets settled. That's like, that just doesn't get settled when you do that. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't take time if you need time to work something out, like, by, before you address somebody. But the silence that you had to put up with your best friend over a 2-line comment, or all that time lost where you guys could have had drinks at the pub or watched matches or, just had great conversations and joked. I'm sure that during that time there were plenty of things you saw that you wanted to talk to them about, and you couldn't have a conversation, and that's a shame. Just the day-to-day things, that you want to, But I'm glad you worked it out. Like, that's funny that he goes, oh, yeah, that's funny. And that was the end of it. Oh, yeah, that's funny. That's the end of it. It's pretty good. And it's a perfect example of how this stuff happens. And it's so unnecessary. We just have to be more open for it. I'm going to be petitioning our legislation to rewrite quite a few pieces of legislation that we already have that exclude people, whether intentionally or not. Just because I expect better from legislators. Actually, I don't know, naive as I am, I actually expect these politicians and legislators to think about this stuff before they write it down and actually look a little bit ahead to the future, or at least be willing to dial it back and redo it when it doesn't work so well. But, naive bear here. I admit to having some rose-colored glasses about that process. But, that's the world I want to live in. So I still look at it that way and try to approach it that way because I want it to be that way. I think it makes sense. I just a little, you may use the word delusional in regards to my opinions on that. It is politics after all. But, you had some other good examples. I wanted to talk about, like, I guess we did already bring it up with the meme I did with the Ayn Rand, but the tissue one that you used in the other article about the man-sized tissues was quite humorous. That, that, I mean, it was, first of all, like, it's mass marketing, and I don't know why people are upset. It actually expressed itself the way it intended to express itself. Like, large.
That's what I
like,
thought too. But
yeah.
I mean, I sort of understand how this comes. So I don't know if any of you remember this, but like a few years back, there was a big hoo-ha about Kleenex and their man-sized tissues. There was never a problem with it historically, but suddenly it was the focus of everyone's attention. And obviously this is because, gender is becoming a much more talked about thing. And sometimes I think these conversations almost go too far. However, whilst I originally thought it was silly that people were having, problems with it, I sort of understand why. So this isn't like mankind, as in humankind. This is actually using the word man to denote a positive thing about men. Men are bigger. Our tissues are man size. Therefore, our tissues are better because they're man. And that
strong, in turn, like strong, big, all the things that they would think the way that they used it, just man, like,
but
manly.
See, that entails a negative comment to women. They're smaller, they're weaker, that sort of thing. And that that is why there is this sort of problem that some people had with it. You know,
Well,
even though it might be a bit of a silly thing, and like the pair of us might sit here and go, well, you know, who really cares?
well, I would, because science, I'm not going to be a science denier. Okay. Yes, there are women that are stronger than some men, but on an average, biology, structure, and scientifically, there is a difference. And yeah, they're bigger. Their bones are different. And in some cases, you know, we're just developed differently and for different reasons. And why deny that? Like, that's silly to me. That's silly. Like, I believe in equality, but also honor some of the differences, you know.
I mean, and I'd agree. I'd agree with that take. However, there are people out there who were genuinely feeling harm from this. And at the end of the day, what difference does it make to me if a company changes their size from, you know, man size to, you know, something simple like extra large? Doesn't really matter. Or what if they call it Jason Momoa sized, or Starship Enterprise size, Galactic size, Universe size? It doesn't really matter, right? I don't have any benefit from whatever this thing is called, as long as I understand that it's a big tissue and I need a big tissue and I can buy that tissue. That's the only thing that's important. So from them changing the name of that thing, it reduces harm to people who are feeling harm at no cost to anyone, really, except for the company who needs to print a different word, which realistically isn't really gonna cost.
And that's where I run into some problem. Like, I want to be what they call PC, politically correct, like all the time. Like, I do. I don't want to offend anybody if I intentionally or unintentionally, you know, and if I can coach my language right. But to me, the man who designed that advertising campaign, he did that on purpose to present that image the way he did. And I can't believe they got so upset about it. Like, I won't say ridiculous. I don't say that they don't have a point. I'm just saying, like, can he not really use the word man in that context without that happening? Like, do we really have to get there? Or isn't it easier just to understand that word man comes from what he was trying to convey, you know, instead of what he absolutely wasn't trying to convey? Because do you really think he sat there with his markers designing an advertising campaign on tissues that are bigger because they want to tell you that you're going to get more in here, that they're larger inside and they're stronger in texture, period? That's all he's trying to convey. And add all that other stuff. Do you really think all of that came in? I don't think so. I don't think he was trying to make any point at all. I don't think it occurred to him. I really don't. I don't think it occurred to any of the people that this advertising campaign got through, because, you know, there's got to be a big vote on it and it goes through testing. It didn't even come up when it went through the testing that all of these big commercials go through, when they put a group of people in a room and they show it to them to see how they're going to react. And none of them said, what about the women? Are you trying to say we're weak? Are you saying women are weak? Like, that didn't happen. But I think this is more a lesson in people taking language and twisting it to their own narrative to prove a point.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of understand that, and I sort of agree with where you're coming from there, and I definitely think you're right about the original intents of this. You know, I think it was completely innocent intent. I think that there is a serious issue with gender inequality, and we almost need to be too extreme the other way. And I do think this is like an extreme version. Like, we almost need to be too extreme the other way to then get to a point where we actually have that balance.
Exactly.
So we have to change man-sized tissues to whatever.
Well, so in that little space, he needs to use 7 words now to convey the same message, because somebody might get upset.
extra large, XXL could be put on there. It could be that simple. Or you could just think about the biggest human that you can think of currently. Maybe make it a celebrity, Andre the Giant. There you go. Andre the Giant sized.
Oh, no, don't even go there, because now we got to bring in, are you slighting wrestling? Are you trying to say wrestling's not a sport? Are you picking on giantism? Are you bringing medical issues? Oh, gosh, no, Joe. Whoa, what did you just do? Oh, no, Joe. Like, you see what I mean? You see how easy it is? That's why I think it's more easy to say, hey, perhaps you didn't mean it that way, and I'm trying to use it as a point that I'm trying to make because I feel a certain way about something that really has nothing to do with these damn tissues. So let's talk about the real issue and leave the tissues alone. Like, I would rather approach it that way. I would rather see that, because, you laughed when I said we have to coach our language to third graders. But really, I think we just proved my point. I think we should. Like, if you have to worry about the word man on a of tissues and somebody getting upset and saying that means that we're speaking poorly about women. No, but does it mean that because women thought that way, or there was a certain whole sector that thought that way, that there's not an issue out there about how women get spoke about or how they're perceived? Well, yes, it clearly defines that is an issue that needs to be discussed, but I don't think relabeling the tissues is going to do it. I really don't.
No, but then I suppose it's such a big problem that you almost have to chip away at it in small bits and win the small battles till eventually you can win the war.
And I'm a little more aggressive, I guess, in my tactics. I go for the issue. I want to go for the big conversation. The heck with the tissues. They're doing nothing for me. I don't got 20 years to wait for people to decide that was a defining moment in history, the day we relabeled those tissues. Because it's not going to happen. It's not. I'm going to leave it up to everybody to know what I meant. No, I think they need to focus on real change where it starts.
I'd agree with you, but then isn't the best way to do this, if someone says there's a problem with man-sized tissues, everyone just goes, yeah, okay. Right? And just accept it off the bat. Just accept it. Okay, there is.
Conversation proves it. I'm a woman sitting here saying the women that get upset about that, I don't agree with you. So that's what I'm saying. Like, even just between you and I, you're coming from yes, those women had a point, whatever the group was that decided that was an issue. And we shouldn't be disparaging. And I'm like, oh, come on, really? Like, really? That's the issue? Like, I'm worried about equal pay and you want the tissues relabeled? Come on, like, get down to the legislative office, woman. Stop wasting your time. Like, I come from a different angle. I'm like, no.
Well, this is another thing I sometimes think about issues like this as well, though. Like, I've got no way of necessarily proving this, and I almost sound a bit tinfoil hat, but is the whole reason that these things are put out there, like an issue with man-sized tissues, is it to actually dissuade people from tackling the real issues, making them focus on things that don't matter so that they don't deal with the gender pay gap and equal rights and everything like that? They're actually so busy spending 6 months ranting about some tissues online and getting into arguments with people that don't see it, that actually all of a sudden, this bill that was going to be passed, they, Maybe.
Exactly. You heard my point. You heard it loud and clear. I didn't have to use a lot of words to do it. It's just, yes, exactly that. Okay. As a woman, yes, exactly that. You as a man just said the same thing. Look at that. Equality in statement about the issue. We're in total agreement. Like, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but yeah, I'm going to say it's a waste of time. Because it was tissues. It's a word. And it comes from, and also it kind of proves a little bit of purposely trying to be ignorant about the issue. Because the word man used that way, you could just as easily be human, right? You could just as easily take it farther into the knowledge of language and how words come about and take it a little more on a little bit higher level and say, absolutely, that's not what they intended. It's almost like they're purposely trying to misunderstand. And, that I usually don't have a lot of tolerance for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Although I get your point, and in the essay, everybody read it. It's very eloquently stated out. I just didn't agree. I was like, no, no, you're giving them way too much grace. That was ridiculous, in my opinion. That was ridiculous, and they're entitled. Of course, I'll give them, what they did. But just like I can say, as a woman, I can say wrong issue to be going at. Definitely, we got
definitely the wrong issue to be focused on. I completely with you, but it's one of those things, it's like, okay, if it really matters to you, changing the name of the tissues because of this harm that you feel, fine, okay, let's focus on real issues now. Like, let's not argue about this.
What also did that actually represent to where we're focusing our issues and what matters to us? Didn't it just give them a whole bunch of, the opposite side who are trying to say we're making a mountain out of a molehill? Didn't it actually just feed into their argument by doing that? The ones that say that, and all right, it's good. I don't mean to start like a whole big man-woman thing here, but, the ones that say we're overly emotional and we take things too personally. And, oh, I'm sorry. Was it that time of the month when you read the ad? That stuff. Doesn't it kind of feed into that when we take a small thing like that and try to make it a big thing about equality and coming against women? I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're actually helping them with the argument about why we're so different. Like, and I try not to do things like that. I want to focus on the bigger things, the more intelligent things that matter. And that's why I was like annoyed with them, even though I support them for feeling that way, and I know why they feel that way, and I support their right to say it. I was a little annoyed that they wasted their time with it, to be honest. So there's bigger things to do.
Yeah, no, there's definitely far more important issues, and I think they sort of made a point. But you're right. It's one of those things, as you said, they should be focusing on the bigger issues, but maybe they can't get heard about the bigger issues, or maybe it is just, something thrown out there for them to focus on.
And the frustration factor, I get it. I get it. But that's why we got to be careful, because we don't want them using that frustration factor about not being heard to make sure that we're heard about something when we're finally heard. You know what I mean? We want it to actually be something. You'd much rather get the same rights with your body as men than getting a tissue rebranded. Exactly. And then this was another one that Mr. Malyot said that Virginia Slim cigarettes, that was another ad campaign, was totally focused on feminine, right? And to the point that, like, I had brothers and they would not be caught dead smoking a Virginia Slim cigarette. Never. It would be not going to happen, because the whole campaign is focused on just it being, instead of a slender cigarette and whatever, it was just so feminine focused. The advertising campaigns, the whole thing, they won't go near it.
That's a big issue actually everywhere. I mean, that sort of campaign is ridiculous. And actually you see it with toys even. They're all gendered. Like, you have the girl toys and they're suddenly all pink, and then you have the boy toys and they're all blue, and it's just like, I mean, what I did with my daughter was she can play with whatever toy she wants and whatever color she wants, and do you know what, she's at the moment she likes everything, she likes dinosaurs and cars, and she also likes babies, and it's like that. I don't think we should gender toys. I mean, there are certain things that obviously a woman needs biologically that a man doesn't. But in general, if why would toy cars be gendered to boys? It's ridiculous. Some girls like cars.
I agree with that, because I also, in child psychology, we know the development of how we think about things starts very, very young. We should not be using play, which is one of the best ways that they grow and develop into acceptable behaviors. Play should not be organized into gender whatsoever, because we are predisposing them for gender roles that may be uncomfortable, may not fit in society, may not anything. Like, you're automatically setting them up for the way it's not now in 2022. I agree with you, Joe. Take the colors away, not away, but make them everywhere. I mean, I would love to see G.I. Joe wearing pink pants. I mean, I know armies don't, but like, what would be the problem? I mean, I have no problem, and this has happened. My niece was over here the other day. She has Barbies, right? We all know what Barbies, everybody thinks of Barbie as a female, but they make the male ones too. There were G.I. Joe guys in camo and everything. Well, she put the jeans from the Barbie on the male doll, and someone tried to correct her on it, and I was like, hey, no, because that's appropriate. I mean, they wear jeans if they want. Like, don't do that.
Right.
Like, please don't do that. I know you don't intend it, but what you're sending a message you don't intend to. Like, when we use pink and blue, we are sending messages that, whether intentional or not, we are sending up for role division, for gender division, for things that we're trying to portray to them, things the way it should be. And we should actually be being a lot less biased about it if we want well-rounded child open to whatever's going to be out in society. And we all know it's going to be different. It's not just going to be male and female. It's just not going to be whatever we're going to present as pink and blue. We're going to set them up for a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding. And as a parent, I agree with you. Let's start from the right. Let her do what she wants. I have a grandson who loved, maybe you know, Sophia the First. She wears a magical amulet that can make animals speak to her. And he was fascinated with speaking with animals. So he wears that amulet, and it's a big purple heart. And he's a very rugged boy, and I'm not taking it from him. If he wants to talk to animals and think that thing works, fine. You know, yeah, it's fine. You know, what's wrong with that? This doesn't have a boy or a girl contents on it. But when you go to buy it at the store, it's all wrapped in pink. It's over there with Sophia the First. It's all like girly. It's even in the store that I went to, it was in what they had the label up top, girls' toys.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And I was like, no, that is ridiculous. Like, take that down. It's just toys, okay? Like, come on, like, stop. If you want to call dolls, call them dolls. Call them what they are, but don't call them girls' toys, you know. Boy, yeah, you know, it starts early. Bearded says that comes from certain place where, though, because a man was against man size, but totally up for the albius. Like, oh, I get it. So the men were complaining to. I do get that part. Yes, they were. I remember that part of it. The men were complaining also, Jim.
Yes, yeah. It's not just women who are in this. I mean, I think it's somewhat positive that it's not just women complaining about gendered language and things like that. I think it's good that you know, us slow-brained men are getting on board with the issues and trying to support women in getting the equal rights that they should have always had. And so the person I was originally talking to about this conversation, that sort of pointed out a few of the things, because, you know, I came in there, that's a bit silly, isn't it? And they were the one that pointed it out to me. You know, what I was saying about how it was, you know, that you're basically assigning positives to the word man, which entails negatives to the word woman, and therefore that's why there's a problem. And I was like, okay, and do you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't hurt me, even if it wasn't the intent of the company. It doesn't hurt me in any way for this brand to be changed, and it reduces the harm of the people who are currently feeling harm. So, okay, yeah. All right, I understand that. But the problem that Luke is just bringing up there is this person was then using ableist language on Twitter and wasn't accepting the correction. And he himself went, you can choose to understand the intended meaning via context and intent or not. And that's, you know, exactly the opposite to what he was saying about this whole man-sized issue. And it's almost like he was white knighting the gender issue, but because the tables were suddenly turned on him and his attack on, you know, religion, he didn't like that it was, you know, suddenly him who was in the crosshairs. And it was just like, well, hang on, you know, this person who actually managed to convince me to look at the language that I thought I was already using quite carefully in a more careful way. And you know, I still try really hard, especially in text. I find it easier, but verbally I'm a lot more natural in my flow and will say things that I don't necessarily mean. I mean, if I'm writing a message, I write it, I read it, I rewrite it, I rewrite it, I rewrite it, and I've finally changed what I've said a number of times so that, right, hopefully that will get my message across. Whereas, you know, when you're talking, it's literally the first draft of your tweet. That's, you know, you don't.
I get hashtagged a lot with the ridiculous things that fall out of my mouth. Yes. hear you. I hear you. Oh yeah. The edit button. Twitter even having an edit button is going to be a big thing, but they'll never get it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever do that, will they?
No, no. I don't think he's into that. No, but I get it. Like they just trying to, and then I mean, how hard it is if you get corrected to just take that second to think and just like solve it all. Just like try to understand what the person's saying about the correction. But it sounded more like he wanted to just be right no matter what happened in the thing, even though you agreed with his point, and then you're just pointing out that he also is using language that could be misinterpreted in that way and more put on it, and he just. Is that what it is? And he just like, oh, nope, not me. Like,
So they were two separate conversations, like, a couple of years apart, but it's still a case of, I don't know. I do think that people do want to be right more often than not, rather than as in seen as right or win the argument, rather than actually being correct. And it's one of those negative things about social media, especially I find on Twitter or a debate group, is people are in that fight mentality where they're looking to just basically find a way to defeat the previous comment rather than actually have any consistency in anything they think about. As long as what they say defeats what the last thing was said, and then defeats it. And sometimes you can actually see people arguing themselves in knots. And if you go, right, you've said this here, this here, this here, this here, you realize these four statements contradict each other. No, they don't. You're reading them wrong. You should understand. Oh, yeah.
or even like, but and then some people will do that and take false statements from all different areas out of context and try to prove points with them too. Like it's like, the way people will try to manipulate language to prove their point is one of the most fascinating parts about these conversations. But that could go on forever. Like we could be in Twitter for weeks now. Just picking out examples of this back and forth where people use that, and look, yeah, oh yeah, okay. Well, let's do a psychology philosophy experiment. We'll get a group of people to analyze Twitter for like a week, pulling just the best versions of. Are you kidding? Who's got that kind of time, Joe? Like,
Luke.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I don't know. It is enticing to think about it, and if anybody's crazy enough to go forward with it, yeah, hit me up. I'll probably participate. I'll help. But still, I mean, I don't know. It just sounds like we're going to be overwhelmed and just end up scratching our heads at the end anyway. It's not going to really give us any answers. It's going to be exactly what we know now. It's a hodgepodge of misuse of language, people throwing words at each other. Some of them know what they mean, some of them don't know what they mean. People wanting to have conversations but not really engaging. People having something to say and not really caring if anybody really hears it or understands it. All of that.
Yeah.
Not always. I mean, I have some great conversations on Twitter. I've met some wonderful people through Twitter, but
yeah, me too.
Yeah, cool. Luke Manel, Luke, I get you here. This is going too far. Well, I was once called sexist for ordering gingerbread men in the bakery. They are gingerbread people now. Yeah. You see, I don't think people need to be corrected that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. You have to own what you do. Do you realize how you made somebody feel when you correct them when you kind of know damn well they're not really doing anything to you personally by ordering a gingerbread man?
No, exactly. I mean at the end of the day, they are generally in the shape of the toilet for the gents' toilets. That's what it looks like. That's what they look like. And do you know what? Sometimes you can have different shaped gingerbread men. Some of them are gingerbread women. But like generally they're in that shape of the gents' toilet symbol. Like, so what does it matter?
And it doesn't matter. Something like that, I really think that's going too far, especially if you go out of your way to embarrass the person about it. Like, think more about that. The harm that you just did trying to correct somebody because you thought something was harmful that really kind of wasn't their intent.
Now at the end, this is a different example. This is a different example as well. So at least with the man-sized tissue, you can understand that there is a positive thing being labeled against the man and therefore a negative entailment to the woman. A gingerbread man, that is just the name of a thing. That's not actually putting any positive spin on the word man there. That's just what it is. It's a gingerbread man. It's a gingerbread.
It is a common multicultural used word. Okay.
Yeah. It's a gingerbread in the shape of a stick man at the end of the day. Like that. Why does that matter?
Yeah, because he does have to put the word man on the end of it to indicate the cookie shape, right? Because if he just said gingerbread, he could end up with a piece of cake. He could end up with a slice, or right? Because gingerbread comes in different formats, and the common one for the cookie shape that he ordered is man, because that's the cookie cutter that they still sell that shape. Others too, you can use any shape you want, but that is the most common shape. That's the one everybody understands. So to really lay someone out and embarrass them over it is ridiculous. That's a little ridiculous. That's like making a point just to be a contrarian, or just to be a needler, or just to poke at somebody.
And I mean that is a battle that just did not need to happen at all. At least I can understand the point with the man-sized tissue. It's one of those things like, do you know what? Yeah, change the name. But gingerbread man, right? I am sat here going, right, I cannot find anything in this that is worthy of discussion from their perspective, other than the fact that Luke's negative experience with gingerbread has given us something to chat about.
Yes, exactly. And it gets worse, because here, I wish I was raised this way, Lone Wolf. I actually do. I wish it was the common term in my house, because it makes sense. He says, to be frank, I never called them gingerbread men. I always called them gingerbread cookies, because they are obviously not human. I wish that's a very good way around it. That really is.
I think that's right. I mean, there is no need for gendered language. I would agree that there is no need for gendered language. And if there is one point, it's okay, why are we going to put a gender on it? But then to change it to gingerbread people seems a bit silly anyway. Unless you're saying a collection of them.
And are you going to be, okay, or are we going to be like, what about the people that use the cookie cutters for animals? Ducks, circles, stars, moons as gingerbread. We're going to be exclusive then and say it's only people, and that's not right either. I mean, are we being entitled? Do we think we're all that? Like we're going to, no. You see, it can get crazy. So like that solution about gingerbread cookies, because what is it? It's okay, here we go. Now is it a biscuit or a cookie? It could be different in different countries, but we know what we're talking about. It's either a gingerbread cookie or it's a gingerbread biscuit, because it is crispy, right? So it qualifies as an English biscuit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to make them. But yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't care which it gets called. Gingerbread cookie, gingerbread biscuit. At the end of the day,
it's gingerbread. It's good too. There's no reason to make anybody feel bad about it. Is the point? It's damn good gingerbread. It's right. It's like, but you see, like that's why I wanted to have this conversation. You see how fun it is to talk about language. Like we will go on for days. It's bizarre the way people will twist it up. This one I'm going to let you read just so I don't misinterpret his point here. Can you see this message? Are you able to see the message?
Yeah, so I got told I was like a transphobe because I was ignoring the phenomenology of somebody's experience who apparently had psychosis on Twitter who I'd never spoken to before. Yeah,
oh my God. That's wow. When they're putting it on you, what you should know based on the language that they use, like that's crazy. I hope you took it for what it was, Luke, and just like let it, I hope you were a duck, if you know what I mean. You just let the water just go off your back. That's what that means. Like, just let it go, because that's like bizarre, because wow.
Yeah. I don't know.
First of all, isn't that impossible to understand exactly somebody's psychosis or where they're coming from, somebody on such a specific issue on Twitter? Like, no, before, like that's.
Luke, is that the conversation with the person who I don't want to even bring their name into it? That you and I have had a fair bit of drama, who's always trying to get people in their spaces and control every conversation. Look, Luke also says that he got
was
told
mansplaining
psychosis to someone who kept getting it wrong. Now, this is one thing that actually I wanted to talk about. Is not necessarily mansplaining in itself, but the broadening of terminology. And there are certain words that lose their impact. So mansplaining is one that, okay, we men definitely mansplain, right? We do. We. It's basically when you're talking to explaining something to a woman in a condescending and patronizing way, and like, oh yeah, you little dear, you don't really understand this, do you? Yeah, we do that. We're assholes, right? And we shouldn't do that. But sometimes you can just be explaining something and it gets taken that way. And sometimes the woman doesn't agree with you and she just throws out the mansplaining thing because it just basically cuts off the conversation.
Right, because it's a man and a woman, so she can just throw that terminology out there and make you wrong instantly and end any really reasonable dialogue after that. Because she just accused you of just that term accuses you of all kinds of things. Belittling women in general, not looking at her as an equal, acting like she doesn't know, besmirching her intelligence, right? With that term mansplaining comes with a big impact. You can't really toss that one around. When actually, you're just acting like a human being who thinks he knows something about something. He's going to tell somebody else, like whatever my gender is,
I actually had it happen to me once. I've only been accused of mansplaining once, and it was from someone who asked me. So I went through a big weight loss journey at one point. I've put some of it back on. I call it the pregnancy weight. And they asked me how I did it. So I said, well, there are certain things that you're going to find right for you, but what sort of things have you tried? And I sort of explained my journey, and they kept on going, well, I'm not going to do that. Well, I'm not going to do that. I was like, okay, but you've asked me for my advice because nothing you're doing is working. So
right. So they ask you for your advice and then accuse you of mansplaining. Is that it?
Yeah.
Like that's that's a whole nother thing. Like that's just a type of person. I don't know. You can't even put that to gender, except for they got to use a gender specific insult against you. Because that's just a whole kind of type of person that just did they really want to know what you thought about it, or were they just trying to?
Well, yeah. I suppose maybe they were looking for me to tell them what they wanted to hear. And I said one of the things that I found really useful, for example, was going on a high protein and fat, but like low carb diet for a while really helped kickstart like my metabolism and weight loss. And I found that
science. Yeah, that's not mansplaining, that's science.
And they were like, well, no, my doctor told me that I need to eat carbs. I was like, okay.
Okay, well, all right. So they're asking for solutions about metabolism, but they I get it. Like you're being blamed for all those rules of the conversation that they never put forward.
Yeah.
Like, like the I want your opinion about this, and then they forget to tell you, but we're not talking about this. I never talk about that, and don't you even approach that. Like they forgot to put the disclaimer out there. I love those conversations. Yeah. Those aren't conversations. Those are exercises of utility. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know why they do that. Like, I want to, when I ask you about something, like, I really want to hear what you have to say. If I start a conversation, I'm willing to go wherever it goes. Like, the other person, total freedom for whatever they're going to say, whatever they're going to do. They're contributing into something that takes two people to do or multiple people to do. You can't really do it yourself, and so everybody has equality in it. Like, I'm not gonna I have been mansplained. I come from the business world. I had my own business and had to deal in the business world a few years ago. Not that it's that great right now, but it was worse, say 10 years ago. And I got mansplained a lot. Well, also learned that sometimes mansplaining is just better for them. Like, it was easier to just let them go and then just do whatever I was going to do anyway, like, because
Yeah.
because if I tried to say I know that, why you think I don't know that? Like, it just it got too
we
far.
men have really fragile egos, you know. We
Yes, and let me just be, let me be one of those. I'm going to say yes, I know that, and yes, that in that situation in my advantage, because I would just let them go on and I don't make a fuss, and then just did whatever I was going to do anyway, because I knew like what to do. But if I needed information, I also learned from that, like learning from being mansplained, I learned how to coach out the real information from the conversation. You know what I mean? Like how to get to the real facts, how to like direct the listen girlies and okay babies to the actual facts that they were saying, and like lean it towards that, ask the appropriate questions to where they would really speak about what they knew about, because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be known for knowing something, for having the information. So I got good at that. It actually helped me. I got good at letting them
and
bring
do you
that
know what?
out.
That's a very good technique, reframing something into something positive and learning a skill from it. That's a really great way to do it, and I don't think many people can do that.
Well, here's the thing. I learned quickly what you can't change. And unfortunately, being a woman out there at the time, I learned quickly I couldn't change that environment, that it was so ingrained. And I hate to say it, I'm not bashing men in general. I am a man lover. Everybody knows that out here. I support rights as far as equality. I'm the one out there speaking men too and all of that. And I don't believe in leftist extreme positions in anything, including women's lib, including any of it. I don't believe in incel any more than I do supreme, extreme women's lib, to where man bad, woman good. I don't subscribe to any of it. But what I do learn quickly is when you can't change something right away. So you need to adapt it to get the best of the situation, because that's the outcome you want. You want the true conversation. If you're out there to learn something, you want to learn something. And the only person who has control of that is the individual, me. I can't control the environment that I'm in if I'm in that environment. Okay, but I can control my reaction to it and what I get from it and how I can get it to the best of my ability. That I learned quick. And I even use that on Twitter. Yeah. Well, it would be better. It's not easy for everybody, because
No.
it is difficult to deal with things you can't change. I get that. I really do. But I also like to always feel like I'm doing something, so I can't sit there and wallow in it, like the things you can't change.
No, I agree. It's something that people actually, everyone is guilty of it. Wallowing in the things that you can't change, and actually, you should focus on the things that you can change, and just let the things that can't change slide. Well, you either let them slide or you change the situation. Because if you're in an environment and you can't hack the way that environment is, you need to just try and get a different job, for example. But you managed to find a way to deal with that environment, so therefore you focused on the things that you could actually change. So yeah, definitely. So carrying on with the broadening of terminology, though, there are other things like that, like the mansplaining thing. Okay, boomer just became, I disagree with an old guy. Trolling just meant I disagree with you. Trolling is supposed to be, when you're intentionally trying to wind someone up. You might be playing a different role to yourself, or you might be playing as yourself. But the idea is you're trying to get on there and really wind someone up. But I've had people where you're having a conversation with them, turn around, oh, you're just trolling. You're like, why am I trolling? Sometimes people ask, like, again, your opinion on something, or quite often we get called theist trolls on Twitter, because we're not going along with what a lot of the other atheists say, even though we're atheists ourselves. It's instant tribalism, and you're clearly theist, and you're a theist, and you're trolling us with this sort of behavior, and you're like, the terminology it becomes a bit too broad, and we also see this with other terms becoming too broad, like the term atheists. It has been one of these things, and I don't want to spend too long on this, but it's gone from being someone who believes gods don't exist to someone that doesn't believe in gods, to people that have never heard gods, to including animals, to including inanimate objects. And now the position of atheist is basically not just anyone, not just anything with a brain, but absolutely anything that isn't a theist is now atheist. And that's just so what are you telling me here? You actually know nothing about the person's position with that label anymore. It's lost all of its impact. All of the conversation around atheists are more intelligent, smarter, rational, etc. has to be false, because actually it's just anything that's not a theist. You don't even have to think about it. A baby counts as one, rocks count as one. So
that's I'm sorry, those always make me laugh, because it comes from the definition, and it comes to everyone taking that definition that is in many different places, in many different ways, and interpreting to their own narrative for ridiculousness, in my opinion. We all know what the basic term atheism means in general, right? And it ain't a rock, okay? It's not a baby, okay? Because it actually, I don't know, in my opinion, to use the term atheism, you had to come to some kind of cognitive thought into what you believed or didn't believe or whatever in. Okay. And I don't even want to get into like beliefs and this and the other thing, but still, it does have some cognitive thought behind it. Okay. And so, like, to say, well, babies are atheists, I'm like, what? Like, that's, I mean, I know kind of what the point they're trying to make, but
it's a bad point.
It's a really bad point. And why? And this is what I want to, like, this is my question all the time. I just sit there and I'm like, I'm not even going to argue with you. Why? Why is that the point you're trying to make? I hear what you're saying. Like, I get it. I don't even want to make fun of you about it. Tell me why that's necessary. Could you tell me what you just added to the universe with that point? Please, right now. Why? Why? Usually ends the conversation, but not like we were having one anyway.
And you'll notice these people do contradict themselves constantly.
Yes, they do.
And you're just like, really? But yeah, anyway, I don't necessarily want to focus too much on that.
Oh, I know that we could do a whole nother stream on that, and you're welcome, or anyone from your channel, or anyone from the chat that wants to have it. That's what library chats is for. I'm open. We should stick to language on this one. It's like, is there any area of your, especially in your essays, because I did link them, and they are linked below. I think everyone should read them if you haven't. I think most of the chat has already. But they are very good in laying out the issue and how bizarre this actually topic can be, and actually how you can look at it in a very intelligent way and dissect it out, the way people are speaking to you and the way people are using it.
Well, I do think there's something that going back on the advertising thing, and I actually think I meant to bring it up earlier, and I saw a couple of people chatting about it earlier as well. So in the UK, there was still is, a chocolate bar called the Yorkie. And they had this amazing advertising campaign because they went around going, Yorkie, it's not for girls. So, of course, this inspired women to go out and buy it. That's all it was really obvious reverse psychology. It was, supposedly too big for a girl to handle. But obviously, that was something that was always seen as a tongue-in-cheek thing, and the women went out and went, no, I like a Yorkie, I'm going to have it. And it increased their sales. More women went and bought the Yorkie just to say, to prove them wrong. Yeah, I can handle a Yorkie sort of thing.
It's a good thing, because that's what advertising does. They take something that is absolutely ridiculous. They use it to their advantage to make it like you wouldn't possibly actually put that out there like you're serious, right? And like people think they do, and then the reverse psychology comes in and they get you to do what they want. And that's fascinating. Well, but that's a true art there. I mean, I don't. I would never want to date an advertising executive.
Yeah. Nope. But the thing is, I can understand why people did get offended by it. They had to change the advertising campaign eventually. But I mean, this one was, I suppose, more obviously sexist than, say, the man-sized tissue. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine that there was genuine harm being caused by it.
Oh, there wasn't. It was definitely tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I would take it as good British humor. Definitely tongue in cheek, snarky, just putting it out there is that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. But at the same time, if there were people feeling genuine harm from it, then they made the right decision by changing the advertising campaign.
They did. Yeah.
But
I don't think here it wouldn't work. I mean, we're already so divided in America. There would probably be riots. And I say that jokingly with just enough sarcasm that I'm serious, people. It is that contentious here. Oh, right now, y'all know it. Like, don't come for me, YouTube, or if you do, be prepared. I'm standing behind this one. It is like that. I live here. I know. I happen to be on one coast and pretty well watching everything that's going on. We couldn't do that. There would be pickets and riots and mass boycotting and then trying to get the company shut down, and it would be
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Autistic, I know you're being silly, but you're trying to add to the conversation. But this is actually a good question because I don't know, and I'd be willing to say now that's how conversation goes. You ask me a question: are animals atheists? I'm being silly, but I'm just adding to the conversation. I don't think any question is silly. Thank you. I enjoy that you're adding to the conversation, but I don't know because I can't speak to an animal, and an animal can't tell me where they're coming from on anything. So I have no idea. So there you go.
I mean, I'd say most animals probably lack the cognitive abilities to understand or have any thoughts around a God concept. So I'd say that they're definitely innocent of it. I'd say that they're probably not something that would have it. There are certain ritualistic behaviors that are observed in some apes, but do they have a God concept? I don't think so.
Well, we could science it that way. We could say it that way, but then we have to bring in all the studies about whether or not they feel empathy and emotion. And if they can feel that, then maybe they can have belief.
Yeah. I mean,
I know that was a little like what,
but dogs definitely have beliefs because when they smell something in the air, they go, "That's food," and they go for it. So
I mean beliefs in the. This is a good lesson in language. I mean beliefs in a different terminology, not necessarily that something happened, so I believe this is the outcome. Not in cause and effect belief, but in the just the kind of beliefs that you have when you don't know why you believe it. Not cause and effect belief. That other kind of belief. Yeah.
So I suppose, are you talking more in the sort of unconscious or subconscious belief?
Yes, because doesn't a lot of what our response to things emotionally, from things that I researched and all, you get the impression that sometimes our emotional reaction to things like that doesn't have anything to do right away with it. It's can be a good portion of it subconscious.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of instant responses will be based on some form of unconscious bias or a memory. I mean, technically, all of your memories are things that your unconscious mind believed to be true. Otherwise, they wouldn't be held as memories. Even if they're false memories, your memory still believes them to be true, and you've got no control over it. But there's part of you, there's part of your conscious mind or your unconscious mind that believes this thing. So yeah,
no, but that is a definite that could be a conversation that will probably get ripped up for, but I just but you see how you can actually go there. This is how this is how language can be used. It depends on where you're coming from it, whether you're speaking psychologically, philosophically, whether you're speaking just in terms of just ridiculousness like I was for a second there. But yeah, it depends on where you're coming from with it. But I kind of like Icarus's too. He says, obviously, the cats are definitely atheists. And dogs worship their owners. I would have subscribed to that. My dog does, and my cat's an asshole. Yeah.
Well, cats think they're gods, don't they? So unless
they do.
So then are they atheists? Unless they've got low self-esteem, they're going to believe in themselves.
Well, I I was called an atheist with a God complex once. Like, make that make sense. That yeah, that I mean that really was a conversation starter or ender, I should say. Oh yeah, yeah. Mm. Well, yeah, but yeah, the use of language hysterical at times. Believe me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, most
But that
definitely.
is a good point. That is definitely a good point about that with the definitions and where that all goes. Well, we have been
Yeah.
talking for an hour and a half, and I know it's later there, and I know you have small ones and a job and things like that you have to do the next day. So I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to talk about whatever else you want to get into the conversation because I have led you astray a little bit, that kind of thing. Yeah. You were worried you would do it, and I'm actually the most guilty of it. I think than you. You've been really good. But here now, okay, here we go. Because Luke has a serious question for you. You ready? And I take no responsibility,
I was just saying
except for the fact that I'm putting it up. There you go.
Well,
What is it?
all that I know is that I know nothing, so I don't know what language is. Or I'm better at saying what it's not, and it's not cheese.
It's no. How could you say that everything is cheese? Wait a minute. No, like everything is cheese. No, really? It's not cheese. No.
I would say though, to answer that one more seriously, language is obviously our primary method of communication that comes across usually in a verbal or written form, but you can obviously have other sorts of languages like sign language, for example. And the idea of language is to try and convey our thoughts or to describe our thoughts in a way that someone else can understand what we're saying. And so the idea is if we want someone to understand what we're saying, we need to be clear, we need to be concise, we need to check our language to make sure that we're not using any terms that can be taken to mean something else. So if the word is polysemous, try and say, I'm using this word. What I mean by this word is this. So then we can use it. You know, if we're talking about, for example, atheism, there's a hot one. If you're saying I'm talking about atheism, the definition for atheism I'm using for this conversation is this. People know what you're talking about, right? So there, you know, that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we're doing, and it's something that I think everybody is guilty of not doing, especially online. We think that our intent is enough, and yes, we should try and think about the other person's intent in conversation and be as charitable as we can with our discussion partners. We should, right. But at the same time, we've also got to try and convey what we're saying in the most clear way. And it doesn't matter if we think we're being clear. Someone tells us, you know, well, this language, this word can mean this, this, and this. So how are you using it? Or this word tends to be used this way. What you're saying is actually quite offensive to those people, even if you don't mean it that way.
That's a very important distinction, because being clear to another person is all their perception of it, not ours, not our intent. How we like. You need to listen to how they're being receptive of it and what's coming back at you, because even though you intend to be clear, whether you are or not is not really you. It's how they are perceiving what you're saying. And you may have to coach it to them. You may have to, adjust it a little bit based on their perception, regardless of how you normally use certain words and things like that. Very good point, because that is the biggest offense. I think we all do that. We all sometimes overlook how somebody else is taking something a little. We should get a clue a little sooner in the conversation, so that there's less misunderstanding. Definitely. Luke. Thanks, Luke. Language isn't cheese, but cheese is language. Yes.
Did you know that cheese is a kind of meat? It's a yellow, tasty beef.
What? No, wait a minute. That's a philosophical question about cows, isn't it? Like, I know this is going back to the cow somehow, because the whole body of a cow. So is it meat? And it actually all right, this is a total another conversation. You're not getting me with that, Joe. You're not getting I know where you're going with that. No. Okay. Yeah. That's quite. I hope you're gonna have to write that one out for me. That was good. Well, yeah, I like cheese, and I'm not a vegetarian. If that's a big question, then it's the different levels. That's a
I
whole
mean,
other.
I love cheese, but I actually can't have too much of it.
No, no, but yes, Bearded, speak to me in cheese anytime. I'm telling you that.
My wedding cake was actually rings of cheese in
Was
in
it?
a cake. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
that's kind of
cheese.
cool. Yeah, all right. Like who do well, I was gonna say who doesn't, but I'm sure there's plenty. And I don't want them coming at me on Twitter and YouTube. It's like I happen to love cheese, no, yeah, but yeah, I'm looking and see if there's any other questions for you in the chat. Anything that besides Luke trying to disrail us,
Well, whilst you're having a look at that, do
Yeah.
you mind if I say something?
No, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that you are joining us on Tuesday on the Sci-Fi Show on the Answers in Reason channel for a conversation of church and state, where we're going to be discussing, the role of religion and what it should be doing in governance and society. Should religion actually be allowed to impose its will on the country, or should the law be decided through different means? Should the church manage its people in a different way, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, and your country has a lot of history on that, which could benefit, everyone from learning about and how things progressed. And ours is going through quite a bit of a hiccup right now about it. And, with not having a large foundation to go back on in it, because there's a lot of misconception on what our Constitution actually says and doesn't say.
I mean, one of the interesting things about it is you have this clear separation of church and state that is supposed to be there, and it seems like it very much isn't. Whereas we have, a state church, yet we don't seem to have that same level of influence in our politics and schools and things like that. Even though many
Even though you
state
still
schools
have
will have Lord's Prayer, we might have to pray. I mean, I went to private school, and I had to pray every morning, and one of the schools I went to go in on Sundays as well. But even some of the state schools will have this sort of thing because we have a state church. They might have that sort of thing. So even though kids are made maybe to do an assembly and pray in the morning or sing hymns, still there isn't the same sort of influence that you'll find in America. But I think we should leave it there and let people join the rest of the conversation on Tuesday.
I think it will, because it's going to be great. I believe that's at 4:00 Eastern Standard. That would be 9:00 your time. Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then for Australian, it will be the next morning.
Yeah.
Sometime it'll be around some of you 10, some of you 11 a.m. In the morning, based on that. But I'm looking forward to it, because it's going to be that conversation going to go everywhere, kind of like this one, because they're big topics, and there's a lot to say about it. And I am actually looking forward to the differences in both of our countries on it, and learning a little bit more. So there we go. So I did put the link to that channel right there, up there, and I'll drop it one more time. This is Answers in Reasoning. They are one of the most undersubbed channels out there right now. So if you're in my chat and you haven't checked them out, go at least watch one or two. And if you like beat drive, you like a little mix, check out some of the pre-show stuff with Joe. It's like I really enjoy it. I play them afterwards too. It can be fun. The conversations are always, I'm going to say, intriguing. I will admit,
polite way of putting it.
I will admit, occasionally they go off the rails, and they do have great humor. And sometimes I miss the plot because they're too busy having shots at each other and trying to derail each other that I don't know what's going on. But but it is always a good time. It's also the best way to, if you want to talk about philosophy, you want to get into these kind of conversations and just think about things in a little bit different way, or think about it in the full circle of it. It's a great channel. And also all of those essays on there, for many of them. I mean, Charlie Dave has written tons. Joe on the Davidian has written tons. Everybody has written so much there. The web page that has all of the essays and all that also is a great resource. Let alone the live streams that they do. So I can't push it enough. Because when I like something, I just push it. I don't expect you all to like it, but at least check it out. I mean, you might. Like, it's not going to hurt you to go look. So
thank you.
No, absolutely, I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely. And so I'm happy. I mean, I promote you guys often in the weirdest places, actually. It just happens to come up. I don't know. I'm just like that. If I like something, I just work it in there because I do. I think you guys deserve a lot more subs. Really do. You've been around a lot longer than I have, and you talk about a lot of very interesting subjects. And you need a following too.
Thank you. I think what we discuss is very niche, so it doesn't interest many people, but we enjoy the conversations anyway, so we're going to keep doing it regardless.
Isn't that how we build all tribes, one person at a time, right? Like, so
exactly.
So by you're being over here, there'll be one or two people over here that'll find it interesting and and productive, and they'll add to the important thing is that everybody over there adds to the conversation. There are no echo chambers. Everybody adds to it, and that's what I really like about it. So there you go. Oh, and also I'm going to give a shout out for Monday. This Monday, Luke. Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's great. So Monday, what time is that, Luke? Please put it in the chat. You could put it in your time if you'd like. I'll calculate it back. But
it's usually 7 p.m. GMT. So
okay, so that would be
2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Eastern over on Monday on Answers in Reasoning. That's when Luke will do his psychology stream, and it's going to be part 2 about he's doing the triad, right? Of
the dark triad.
The dark triad, and part 2 is going to be about our favorite subject, narcissism. We've talked about that here on this channel, and it was interesting. So you guys check that out. He'll get some razzing in the chat about psychology not actually being a science, but don't listen to them. I'm on Luke's side about that. It's fascinating, and that's why we're speaking about it. And yes, it's science. I mean,
it definitely is science. And just because it's called a soft science doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, soft sciences are generally harder than hard science. Hard sciences are hard science because they have the hard data. That's why they're a little bit easier, because something like psychology, there's a lot of self-report in it.
There is.
And that actually makes it harder because people are not accurate with what they describe, and they sometimes change what they're saying. They almost manipulate their own thoughts or feel pressured into saying something a certain way. So yeah, I mean, we give Luke a hard time over it not being a real science all the time, but that's just the way we interact.
And his mates, yes, they torture him often, but that's why he was here trying to derail you. And that's why we let him too, because let him try. Because hey, what's good for the goose is great for the gander, or something like that. I don't know. This has been great. Yeah, I'd invite you back anytime to talk about anything you want.
Awesome.
Anytime. And that goes for people in the chat. You got something to talk about? That's what these conversations are like. I've had a few of them now with several different people, and you could see it's just about something that you know about or something that fascinates you that might interest other people. And it's called Library Chats for a reason. It's supposed to be calm, respectful, from all sides, easygoing, and just hopefully entertaining, and people will take something away. If anything, Joe, what would you want them to take away from the conversation that we just had? I mean, it was like an hour and 50, almost 2 hours.
Just to be more reflective on what you say, and think about if the words that you're using could be taken by someone a different way. And if someone says something about your use of language, don't instantly go, well, that wasn't my intent. Think about what they're saying and go, okay, and explain, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it that way. This is how I was using the term, and say, but I will be more careful with my language in future. If you notice me get it wrong again, please correct me. I could say it this way and this way, and just actually think about different ways that you can communicate in a clear way that doesn't have people finding ways to dick on you unnecessarily.
Exactly. Well said. I can say it better. We do need to be more conscious of it. It's helpful, especially if our main intent is to get our point across or to help someone with the conversation, inform with the conversation. Yeah, you got to be open to what comes back to you to make it a conversation.
Yes, exactly.
And just to be more conscious of how we all use language. We're all guilty of many offenses in language. Mine is over flowery, unnecessary words that mean multiple things at the same time. You know, other people is gender, using gender specifics when not necessary. Some people use obvious language without intending, just because of culture or how they were raised or just how they use the words. But when you get feedback about it, that's the important thing, is to continue the conversation. Like Joe said, you just you might have to bring it in a little bit, be a little more conscious. Because we can't. We're none of us are perfect. That's the one thing. None of us are ever going to be perfect in language. Language changes and grow. Language is fluid. Okay,
It is.
it's a changing, evolving thing, and needs to change in some cases faster than it has been. But language is always growing, developing. The way we use a word, you could look it up, and it might not even say that in the dictionary, and yet that's the way everybody is using the word. And that's what it is. It's like fluid. It's like cultural. It can be it can be gender specific and not. It's just fluid, and we just have to be aware of how it affects everybody else around us. It's not always just from our perspective. So,
most definitely.
Yeah. Well, this was so exciting. I was really happy about this, Joe.
No, thank you for having me on.
No, it was great. It was great. So on that, I'm going to put the outro on. Everybody, again, check us out on Monday for Luke and Bearded Heretics, Narcissism Part 2 of his Dark Trilogy on Answers in Reasoning. And then at 4 o'clock the next day, Tuesday, we'll be having Religion and Politics. Yeah, get ready for that. Yes. Bring your, if you're gonna bring your blow torches, don't forget your water guns, because that was gonna be lit. Yeah, that was gonna be. I can't wait to see how the chat's gonna be with that. That's gonna be fun. Thank you, Joe. Anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime. You're welcome.
Had a great time. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good night, all.